one true initiative to actually end the Federal Reserve would be if local, state, and county authorities would issue a local currency, or even businesses issue a local currency. And this has been done more and more in the United States. It's been done in other countries throughout the world, and actually it works very well. There's no issuances of a currency based upon debt. It's actually a true currency. It doesn't need to be have intrinsic value in itself, and that's one argument I actually have with the so-called fiat money supply. If you had paper notes, the system could work. It's just that it's based upon debt. That is really the real catch that really wrecks everything and puts everybody in debt bondage. But local currency is a way around the Federal Reserve, and it really has to be done on a local level, because I'm, in my mind, 100% certain you're never going to get some guy elected on top of the United States or someplace in the Senate or whatever who's going to change the Federal Reserve at that level. You can trash it at the local level. And this is an interesting article from Wikipedia, and I was aware of these type of things. I was aware of these things for years, and it could work with paper. It doesn't have to be silver, it doesn't have to be copper or anything like that, or have any kind of an intrinsic value. And it just goes on. I'm just going to hit the highlights on this article real quick. In economics, a local currency is, in its common usage, is a currency not backed by a national government and not necessarily legal tender, and it's intended to trade only in a small area. Obviously, central banks hate it. In the modern era, the most recognizable local currencies were company script issued by certain industries to pay workers, token coins issued by some businesses to encourage customer loyalty. So you'd be coming back to buy their product with their currency. But this has worked in Japan, and also in Europe, and also in England. So it works in a situation where there's an economic depression or whatever like that, and it could spur on the economy in small sectors. But that's what you really need to do. You really just need to spur the economy in small sectors. Because what happens when the central bank in the United States, otherwise known as the Federal Reserve, the private Federal Reserve, issues more money? It really doesn't get down to lending where the businesses actually need it where the middle class are. It doesn't get into the sectors. It really just goes into the hands of speculators, and it drives up the price of commodities, and you know what to do. Then you need to bet on the commodities. But just goes on. Local currencies can come into being also when there's economic turmoil involving the national currency, like in the United States. For example, during the Argentine economic crisis of 2002, small denomination, interest-free provincial bond IOUs issued by local governments quickly took on some of the characteristics of local currencies successfully. Now, in a local currency, it actually spurs economic activity right at the source where it's needed. And it's almost like, do you believe in central planning, or do you believe in decentralized planning? That's, and actually you think about it, centralized planning never worked. It's the free market works best. So one solution to actually destroying the Federal Reserve piece by piece is to issue these local currencies. And they don't have to be backed by anything. It's a matter of how they're managed. I know it can rip people off that way, but usually when you got the central banker right in your county, you can get at the person a lot easier. So, I mean, that'll keep them honest. I mean, just, you know what I mean, right? This is talking about in Austria, I believe it is. The Wurgel experiment that was conducted from July 1932 to November 33 during the height of the Depression, because Europe was in a depression, is a classic example of potential efficiency of local currencies. Wurgel, a small town in Austria, was 4,000 inhabitants, introduced local script during the Great Depression. By 1932, unemployment in Wurgel had risen to 30%. And the local government had amassed huge debts, very little cash reserves. So local construction and civil maintenance had come to a standstill. So on an issue, the town's mayor, this mayor, whatever his name is, Guggenbarger or whatever, the local government printed 32,000 labor certificates, which carried a negative 1% monthly interest rates and could be converted into shillings at a 98% of face value. So, an equivalent amount in shillings deposited in a local bank is covered for the certificates in case of mass redemption earned interest for the government. The certificates circulated so rapidly that only 12,000 were actually ever put into circulation. So, the velocity of money, when you don't have a bunch of rip-off artists on the top controlling the situation, it actually works a hell of a lot better when it gets right into the hands of the people. Could you imagine if, when they talk about the first QE, if that $1 trillion went into the hands of the people, nobody'd be in debt. That's bullshit. I'm not in debt, but I know most Americans are in debt. So, I play a lot smart because I'm not like these idiots. They get money and they throw it away instantly. But $1 trillion, like it was over $1 trillion that was the first QE. If that went into the hands of the people and it was just used, they're forced to pay off debt, it would be done with. And that's really the game of the game, because the whole game is debt. So actually, one way around it, I mean, it's not actually gold and silver. You can just issue local fiat currency and use it in public works and things like that. So, I mean, as long as there's, exchange of services going on and there's actual real production going on, the actual fiat currency takes a value on of itself. It's not a perfect solution, I don't think, but it's a way around getting rid of the Federal Reserve, because this would actually diminish their power. The one problem with this little experiment, the Austrian Central Bank hated it, so that was the one thing. They use this in Japan in certain instances. They use it in, I think, the Netherlands. It can be very effective. It could be used. It's used in certain places in the United States too. I mean, it's not totally unknown in the United States, but for the most part, it is. It goes on to say the advantages: local currencies tend to circulate more rapidly than national currencies. The same amount of currency in circulation is employed more times and results in far greater overall economic activity. It produces greater benefit per unit. So this could actually stimulate the economy a lot better than what the Federal Reserve is doing, because people would be able to see what's going on. If there's going to be some kind of games going on like the Federal Reserve does, you can correct it a lot easier at the local level. Local currencies enable the community to more fully utilize its existing productive resources, especially unemployed labor, which has a catalytic effect on the rest of the local economy. And since local currencies are only accepted within the community, their usage encourages the purchase of locally produced and locally available goods and services. So there goes your trade imbalance, So it's got a lot of advantages, It says there's been a tremendous surge in the use of local currencies over the past 2 decades, and I've been aware of this. I heard of this going on in different areas of the country. So today there are over 2,500 different local currency systems operating in countries throughout the world. So, I mean, it's not so much a problem that you say you have this piece of paper in circulation and it has no intrinsic value. It's the fact that it's basically created out of debt. That's really the main thing. But the other thing is, it's really where does the currency start at? Where does it actually go into? It goes into lesser banks. It takes 1 million years for it to get down into the actual middle class businesses that actually need the money for loans or for production or to expand and more capital to do what they need to do. So it really it usually goes in the hands of a few people and they speculate with it, and that's what's been going on because it's basically a big. Federal Reserve is like a centralized communist racket, just plain English. But it's not so much. It's not so bad that the currency is actually fiat or it's paper. It's the fact that it's centrally managed, and that's the number one thing. And it's the fact that it's also it's based upon debt. That's number two. I know the fiat problem could come in. It could be a problem because somebody could actually create more money out of nothing, and they're tempted to create more money out of nothing, and thus devalue the currency. But actually, that is even less of a problem than it being based upon debt or the fact that it's too centralized. Um, so this might be a way around the Fed that could diminish its power, and it's a heck of a lot more realistic because it's not going to eliminate the U.S. dollar, but it's going to complement it. It's actually going to complement. Uh, if there's more money supply needed in certain areas, it could be done by local authorities or local governments or local businesses. They could actually create some type of notes that could be exchanged for goods and services. So it's been experimented with and it has worked well, and the central banks hate it. So just the fact that central banks hate it tells you that it's not such a bad thing. But this is probably something a lot more realistic because I personally don't know how the hell they're going to end the Federal Reserve. And I think the only way it's going to end is that it's going to just, somehow just get destroyed by its own stupidity or planned stupidity as far as inflating the currency into oblivion, and then it'll be taken over by a world currency, which I think is the scam that's going on. But one way around it is a local currency, and it doesn't really have to be backed by anything per se. It just has to be managed well, and the fact that it's local, people will have a better handle on how it's managed rather than someplace far off and mysterious, because they can really take they can audit their own books more or less because it's their local government. It's a good idea, and I think a lot of people are not focused in on it because they're going for a political solution, and I agree with that. But somehow I don't think that's. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I know this is real though. This can actually work for real, and it can work in pieces, and that's what you want to do. You're not going to get this all-encompassing, just end the Fed or change its whole system and all at once. You can do it at a local level, piece by piece by piece. The beast can die by 1,000 cuts. That's how it'll work.